Hi, my name is John Weikert, and today I'm going to be demonstrating a new product from Sulis Systems called QBXcell. Now, this product has been designed to enable you to analyze and extract data from your business objects XIR3 or BI4 repository and export it into a useful format so you can then do further analysis. Okay, so here we're going to log into QBXcell. Now, QBXcell is actually a Java desktop application that's been developed using the Business Objects SDK. So I'm logging in here into my system. And obviously that's going to be obeying any security that you have set up in your Business Objects system. Right, I'll just resize the application so a little bit more screen space. There we go. Okay, so what we're having in front of ourselves is a starting SQL statement, which obviously needs to be completed. Now, in the middle of the screen we have some little drop downs. The first drop down allows me to choose from the 3 virtual tables. So if I select Info Objects. Now, having selected Info Objects, the next drop down shows me all of the applicable kinds for that virtual table. And if I were to select, say, a Webby as a kind, now the properties that are displayed beneath that are applicable to a Webby type object. Okay, so let's modify the query slightly. So I'm just going to put my cursor to the right of the comma. So we've got the SI ID. It might be nice to have the SI name. Now we can actually type these things in, which is probably quicker. And we might want the SI kind. And we could also go with the SI author, for instance. I've got a trailing comma there which the program will actually take out, but I'll just remove that. So there's a statement. I can now refresh the table, and the information actually comes back as a table. So each object is on a separate row here. Fantastic, that makes it a lot easier to analyze. And what we may want to do then is actually export that information out to a different system for further analysis. So I can choose Export. Let's export it to a CSV and call this one Table 1. And that's going to go into My Documents by default. We can obviously change that. So that data has been exported. Or we could say, well, actually I want to export that as an XML file. So it's going to go to My Documents again, call it Table 1 again, as this is going to be an XML document. So data exported. So let's have a look what that data looks like. Okay, so we open up Windows Explorer, look in the My Documents folder, and if we have a look at the Table 1 CSV, simply double click on it, and there is our information captured straight into Excel for further analysis. Let's close that. Or we've got Table 1 XML here as well, so I can double click on that. And we have our information as an XML file, which we can obviously do other analysis with or translate that into different formats. Okay, so that's pretty useful, exporting to CSV and XML, but it'd be quite nice if we could actually get this data into some sort of database for further analysis. Okay, so if we want to export this to a database, first of all I go to Tools, Database Options to make sure we're pointing to the database I want. And currently we can choose an Access database, an Oracle database, or a SQL Server database. I'll leave it as Access to keep it simple for the example. And I've already set up a DSN to a local access database. I can test to make sure that we're actually talking to the database, save any changes that we've made. And then I can simply go to Export, Export to Database. I'll call that one Table 1 as well. That should now have exported all the information. So if we have a look at that Access database, it's F5 to refresh, and here we have our table. And if we open it up, we can see we have the fields that were in the SQL. But in addition, we also have the cluster name for this business objects cluster. We have a capture date, timestamp, and we have a unique row ID for each row. This means that I can run the same query in the future, and I can capture the data in the future, so we can then have a history of how that information has changed. I could also do the same query against 2 or more clusters to actually compare information between clusters. Let's just close that down again. We won't save any changes there. Iconize that. And it could be over time that we actually change the information that we want. So at the moment we've got 4 columns. If I put in here SI instance as well, so we can see whether the object is an instance or not, I can refresh the table. I don't have to. When I'm exporting to a database, I could go straight to export, detailed export to database. We'll call it table 1 again. Export it, and again look at the Access database, open up the table, and this time you'll see that the table has automatically been amended. We now have an SI instance column in addition. Obviously we didn't capture any instances the first run, but the data for the second run, we have all the instance information actually imported. So QBXcell actually amends the tables as necessary, and it'll also increase the size. So if a character field increases, it'll actually increase the size required as well. Okay, now to take you back to another potential problem, if we have a look at a query from Query Builder, here I've pulled in some information. I've also asked for an object called SI files. Now SI files isn't a single parameter, it actually has a number of properties within SI files. Now these are known as property bags, and in fact one of these properties could have another property bag within it, so you have a sort of never-ending series of property bags potentially. So how do we cope with that? Well, if we have a look at that query, and one way of having a look at the query, I've actually saved this query, so I can go to File, open an SQL file, and here we have the property bag example, so I can simply pull that in. So with QBXcell you can save and recall your SQL, and if I refresh the table on this one, we can see here that SI files is actually a property bag with a number of properties in there. So yes, I could export this to Excel or XML, but that's probably not going to be too useful. When you go to property bags, it's probably more useful to have tables. So if we export this to our database, and I'm going to call this one, let's call it property bag, just to make it stand out, and I click OK. Okay, now going back to Access, F5 to refresh. Now this time, property bag is the main table with the main objects in it, but what it has also done is created another table for the actual property bag. So it will automatically create property bags for you, and you can actually specify how many levels down you want to go with property bags within QBXcell. So that's quite neat. You can actually also see the same information as an XML. There is a second XML option here, which is the detailed export. The normal export keeps it as a tabular structure, but the detail export actually expands these property bags as well as an XML file. So if we just open up Windows Explorer, there's our property XML. There we go. So it actually expands the property bags as well in the XML. Okay, so we'll just shrink Access down for a moment. Because you may be generating quite a lot of tables, another feature I've actually put into QBXcell is the ability to delete database tables. So here I can get tables from the database we've already highlighted. I can select the tables I want to delete, and I can hit delete tables, and away they go. This keeps things nice and tidy for when you're evaluating or demonstrating. Something else we can do is look at the security information. So these options will bring back quite a lot of data. So if you're going to use these, we can go for the security info, we can go for detailed rights info, and for limits info as well. If I keep the SQL the same, now as I said, this will be pulling back quite a lot of information. So another option we have on the export to database is a full export to database. Difference being that the detail export will run the SQL as you have it in the SQL text area. The full export will actually do it in batches. So you can specify how big a batch you want, and this hopefully will keep down the demand on the CMS. So if we do a full export to database, we'll call this one security example, and this will take a bit longer. As I say, it's pulling back a lot of information about the security for each object. While it's doing that, the other options we have here are for schedule info and processing info, and these are available actually on the drop-down list. So I can actually pull the drop-down list here, and we have our schedule info with all the schedule info information there, so you can get hold of those as well. Meanwhile, our query has finished, and we should now have our security information. So if we open up Access again, hit F5 to populate. So here is the main table as we saw before, pulling back the information about each of the documents. But what we also have then are security roles, effective security roles and explicit. It's a very limited CMS I have at the moment, so if we just have a look at the effective roles, so on the security roles we can see the different principals, and we can see the roles that they've been assigned, whether they're inherited or not. If we look at the security rights, the effective security rights, you'll see in here we have all of the security rights for each object against each principal. So a lot of information there. You can then actually work through your full security setup. We also have limits information here, so if we do have limits set up, it'll show us the limits that have been set up on any objects that we have. Okay, so lots of data there. Okay, again I can go and delete those tables just to tidy things up. Okay, so you may have a number of queries that you develop. As you've seen before, you can actually save the queries, but you may want to run them quite often. It's a bit of a fag to have to come in here and run them manually. So we have a schedule option where you can set up a configuration file. So if I open up a configuration file, just this little demo one we have here, so these are all the parameters for a scheduled option. So we set up which CMS we want to look at, and you can actually run against any CMS from any CMS if you put the correct login details, etc. there. We have an output format, so whether we want to go to database or XML or CSV, whether we want all the security rights, etc. Also we can set the property bag level we want to go to, and whether we want to split the property bags by kind. That's something else you can actually do. Over on the left, if we do choose database, we have the database option. So as you can see, I'm going to access again. Database mode, so I can either append to existing tables, I can delete those tables and rebuild them, or I can simply truncate them. So I'm going to append, and batch size here is going to do 50 records at a time. And here's my select statement that I'm going to be using. So that's fine, I'm happy with that. And what we can do is we can actually go to schedule and test that schedule. When we save that schedule configuration, it actually stores it as an encrypted file. So if we shoot across to the CMC, I have a QBXcell folder here, and I have QBXcell as a program running, as a Java program running within the CMC. So I can simply click on this and I can run now. And that is actually running that file I've created. So in practice you would create a number of these encrypted files and you'd set them up as separate jobs periodically to run. So that one's running at the moment. Okay, so the run's finished, that's all fine. So I can then go back to Access to see what's actually happened, hit F5, and there's our scheduled job which is now run. I hope you enjoyed the demonstration and can now see how easy it is to extract business objects repository data using QBXcell. Please contact me if you'd like to arrange an evaluation or if you have any further questions on the product. And if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. Goodbye.